Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of Conversations with Claire here on IDAGIO Live, where classical music happens. It's my great pleasure today to introduce Solenne Païdassi. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, hi, everybody.
Actually, we were also supposed to have a great guest, Franziska Hölscher. Sorry?
She's here.
Is Franzi here? I'm sorry. Oh, hi. Franzi, can you hear us?
She can.
Okay. Well, in any case, we had a few technical things, but maybe it's going to be resolved soon. So I'm here today with Franziska Hölscher and Solenne Païdassi, and both of them are great and esteemed violinists that I've had the great pleasure to work with a couple of times, yes, in my German chamber music career. So Franzi, also, can you say something and see if we can hear you?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Yes. Everything works now. Perfect.
Hello. I'm sorry. I had some technical problems, but now it's great.
No problem. All is well. Great. So great that we're all here. And like I said, both of them are violinists. And why don't you tell us where each of you are right now? I mean, I'm currently in my apartment in Germany, but where are you both right now?
So I'm in Brussels right now, where I work as concertmaster of the Belgian National Orchestra, and well, I'm moving soon to Düsseldorf to start new career as professor. But for now, I'm in Brussels and just enjoying rainy afternoon.
Lovely, and we'll come back to that later. But Franzi, where are you right now?
Yes, I'm coming from Heidelberg. I'm back on the road again, and I play this week in Munich. Yes, I was rehearsing yesterday with our friend Kit Armstrong here in Heidelberg at my parents' house. And yes, and then I will be on tour again, finally.
That's great. I mean, I've seen, actually, Franzi, you've been traveling quite a lot in the last couple of weeks, so it's nice that things are really starting up again, performing wise, right?
Yes, that's great. And yes, I think the first Corona time was very hard for me.
Yeah, I think it was hard for all of us. I mean, maybe we can all give a few like funny anecdotes or so about these times. I mean, because it started already a long time ago. It's amazing to think that we are already in July. So the whole thing started about 4 months ago, maybe even a little bit more. So it feels like half the year is gone. It just went by in a blink. And you had to get accustomed to the fact that within 2 or 3 days, suddenly everything was kind of over. But Solenne, you spent most of your time during the lockdown in Brussels, right?
Yeah, well, I actually gave birth to a baby girl on the first day of confinement. So
on the first day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I gave birth, and on that day they closed all the shops in Brussels. So that was it. I mean, you couldn't buy diapers, you couldn't buy anything. There was no toilet paper, obviously. So, it was quite interesting, but in a way for me it was, lucky, because I got to enjoy, I had nothing better planned, than to take care of my daughter for the next 2 months. So for me, it turned out quite okay. But I'm sure for you also, for you both, not playing any concerts, not seeing any audience or people, and both of you are playing so much chamber music, just like me as well. And
we didn't have babies, right? I mean, Franzi, you also didn't have a baby. Yeah, me neither. So it was a kind of a quiet time in general, very quiet. You get used to the quiet. But I mean, Franzi, yeah, you're always on the road. You usually live in Berlin, right?
Yes, I'm living in Berlin, and I have been spending my Corona time there since the lockdown began. And yes, it was a very challenging time, and but I have to admit that at the beginning I almost felt a relief to get some rest. But I'm not the type to sit back and just wait for the end. And
I get it. Yeah.
So I always have to be in motion, and And so I started to develop new projects in this time.
Yes.
I produced a Corona film. It will be published this week, and with kids together. And then, yes, I had some offers for streaming concerts, for ghost concerts, and yes, finally I had to take care of my festivals. So you know that I'm leading a festival in the south of Germany.
Yeah,
So,
actually we in Medlock, right? The Kammermusiktage Medlock. Yeah, and this is also the first time that Solenne and Franzi, you kind of meet each other, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's so nice. But yeah, me and Solenne, actually, we had the great pleasure. Solenne, did we play twice in Medlock?
Yeah. And we actually played the Ravel Sonata.
Yes, exactly. So it all ties together so well. I mean, this is Franzi. Is this your first year in Medlock? This is your
no,
first.
it's the second year. So I
really?
had one normal year and now this Corona edition.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's so great that the festival in Medlock really takes place. So we have
it's a luxury, I think, nowadays that something actually takes place. But like I said, I mean, it was a beautiful place, quite quiet, quite quaint, I think I would say. And yeah, and me and Solenne, we had a great time performing for the audiences there. They were very appreciative, and it was a beautiful was it a kind of schloss that we were playing at? The normal place.
the normal place is an old abbey.
Oh, okay.
But we cannot play there this year.
Of course,
So,
yes.
we have to rebuild one of our other venues. It's a large theater tent, so that we can play under the new Corona conditions.
Yes,
Wow.
yes. Yeah, I've seen some photos. I mean, this can be like the kind of new Verbier festival in Germany then, with those tents. Yeah, lovely. We'll come back to that also for sure. I mean, it's very interesting that that you are programming a festival and there's so many questions there. But maybe we can right now first ask a little bit. Solenne, tell us a bit about your background. I mean, you are were born in France and you studied in France in the beginning, and then actually, yeah, let's hear how it continued from there.
Yeah, I have a messy education in a way, because I left France when I was 11 already to study in Switzerland first. I studied in Switzerland for 4 years. Then I went to the Royal Academy in London. And then I moved to Philadelphia and I studied in Curtis, where I met you. 18 years ago, I actually calculated. So, we've known each other 18 years, which is amazing.
That's really scary. That's really scary. We had classes together. I even remember that. But, me being on that time, I think I was like 12 or 13. And then I think you were just a couple of years older. It was kind of like, whoa, senior person there.
Yeah, just
senior people. But yeah,
baby pianist.
Exactly.
But no. So it was just really funny to then run into you again, because after Philadelphia, then I moved to Germany. I studied in Hanover, and that's where we ran into each other again, and actually started playing together. I think it's so funny that we actually never played together in Curtis.
No.
And then finally started in Germany. So it's just for both of us to finally meet and play together in
many
Germany
years.
18 years later. It's just amazing.
Well, I also just want to throw in a fact that I've noticed in general. When I was in Curtis, I started out pretty young there, and we have a chamber music class, and everyone has to have, I think, 2 projects a year, 1 or 2 projects a year. If you're very young, only 1 project. And this is really a kind of mandatory obligation. And when me being quite young, I always thought oh yes, it's just something I have to do, just have to get my credit, and then that's it. I didn't really learn to love chamber music, or I didn't really see the great value in making music with people you like, because I hadn't forged these friendships really until I got to Germany. And even then it still took some years. But I was so happy then in Germany. It seems like chamber music is almost like a way of life. And that's also how I met many great colleagues. And I think there was one special concert, actually, Franzi, where we met for the first time, and it was a concert which was such an interesting permutation. We played like Ravel Violin Sonata, we played Hindemith, was a clarinet quartet, and Brahms Trio. So it was a very, like a very differentiated program, all kinds of styles, but it's just great to be able to meet all these different characters in different concerts there.
Yes, my point is, for me, chamber music is so essentially important in my life, not only as a musician. And I think for me, it's also very essential for my solo playing. And I think if I'm playing with an orchestra, every performance of a violin concerto becomes a large chamber music performance in my opinion, and of course it was very important for me in my human development.
Yes, absolutely. And how was it like right now? How is the percentage, let's say, of concerts that you play that is chamber music, and then versus like a kind of solo? Although I guess for a violinist, also a solo recital is usually with a pianist, so that's also still chamber music. So it really, I would say it's the majority of your performing life is chamber, right?
I think the majority is still chamber music, but more and more solo. So I think at the moment maybe 60% chamber music and 40% solo.
Oh, a very nice mix. And how about you, Solenne? I mean, you are now in, it's very interesting to kind of follow how your life went, because you were in Germany, and from there you won some very big competitions, and then you're now in an orchestra. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've gone basically through almost every job possible in the music world, but you know, well, obviously I don't have a festival or anything, so I'm really impressed with, you know, people organizing festivals, because I think that's an amazing opportunity to, you know, program the music that you want to hear and that you want to play. But yeah, so what I did after all this studying everything, so I won Thibault competition in France, and what happened after that is that, you know, my career in France took off. So I was playing a lot of orchestra concerts, I was playing a lot of chamber music, obviously, with a lot of really excellent people. And then 2 years ago, I became the concertmaster of the Belgian National Orchestra in Brussels. So I started doing that as well. And, you know, every time it just adds to the experience, and it changes every time you learn something new, a new skill in a way. It changes the way you look at everything else that you're doing, and it changes the way you play with other people. So, you know, it's actually, I've picked up some extremely like bad habit of always showing what I'm doing. So, you know, I try, which, you know, it can be quite insulting when you're playing chamber music with other people, because I don't think about it. You know, now it's just become, I have to show. And then, you know, I remember, oh, you know, obviously those people, they know what they're, you know, when we're playing chamber music, you don't need to show every single articulation. So that's been quite different. And now, so I actually will stop being a concertmaster now, and I will, you know, start teaching in Düsseldorf as well. I've been teaching already for 5 years, and but now, so I will just take that as a full-time job. Yeah. And, you know, keep doing obviously a lot of chamber music, a lot of solo concerts. Well, you know, now with the virus, everything is kind of on hold. I've been doing also a lot of actual solo recitals. So, you know, by myself with Bach and Isaïe, because this year also my Bach CD came out. So I recorded.
Did it come out this year? It came out this year.
Yeah, it came out this year. So, well, you know, with the virus and everything, it's it was delayed a little bit, but yeah, it came out this year. I recorded all Bach sonatas and partitas, and I've been obviously, you know, proposing this program with Bach, Isaïe, Paganini, and kind of mixing them all together. So that's been, you know, that's basically what I've been doing during virus time.
Well, it sounds like it's a lot happening, which is great. Franzi, do you actually have any plans to teach, or not yet?
Yes, I love teaching, and I'm teaching on master classes. Sometime in the year, but yes, I have no teaching position, and at the moment I'm playing more and more concerts, and yes, have my 2 festivals. So I think it will come, but at the moment.
it's such a responsibility to teach. I mean, to have a class, and so then you're going to be having a full class, I guess, in Düsseldorf, and you're really starting them up. I mean, you haven't selected anyone yet, but you're going to probably go and choose, I guess, 6 to 8 people, and then to really know that this is a responsibility. When you choose them, you're going to be somehow stuck with these students for the next 3 to 5 years or so. I mean, this is,
it can be even up to 7 years. So
yeah, up to 7 years. So it's like using a relationship. I mean, you got to be, or maybe not even then. Relationship, you can end it. But in this case, you really have to be very careful. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a whole nother skill, and I'm sure it's going to be very fulfilling there.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. So with both of you, I've had the great pleasure of performing the Ravel Violin Sonata. And I find it quite interesting because usually whenever I work with a violinist, a different violinist, and we talk about a program, this is almost one of the most popular pieces, like a piece that they would immediately say like, oh, a cool piece that we can play that's short, that's not too long, Ravel Violin Sonata. And so I've had the chance to play it with different people and also develop kind of my own take of the piece, so to say. From a pianist standpoint, I always found the piece to be so versatile on the violin. And I always was, especially in the third movement, for example, the piano is really not doing anything, but the violin is really working, I guess, at like, full mileage speed. And I would love to hear both of your viewpoints about this piece. I remember working, I think Solenne, we played it more recently, but Franzi, I remember your interpretation also quite well. It's a piece that's kind of, I guess, a centerpiece in both of your repertoires. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background, experiences about it, and yeah. Idea.
Yes, I think what fascinates me most about the sonata is the variety of the different colors, but also the progressiveness of the composition. Yeah. And on the one hand, we have this wonderfully floating, even dancing French music, and yeah, especially in the first movement, and which Ravel leaves behind completely in the next movement and travels to America. And that's so crazy that he composed this without ever having visited America at the time of composing. And I think the heart of this fantastic work for me is the blues. And this, yeah, it's wonderful to hear this, this jazz enthusiasm and the approach to jazz in the harmonics, in the phrasing, and this special, yes, this saxophone sounds and banjo sounds, and that, yeah, for me this is the most wonderful movement in this work. Yeah. What do you think, Solenne?
Yeah, well, I personally, I really love the first movement as well, because I think it's so, flowing, and well, it's extremely French. What I think is funny in this sonata in a way is that Ravel actually thought that the violin and the piano sound were completely incompatible. Mm-hmm. So he really thought that the violin and piano didn't match, and I don't think he didn't try very hard in the sonata to make them, play together. So that's always something that I find very, very funny in this sonata. And then the blues, of course, I think I played this sonata when I was 14, 15 for the first time. And, you start, playing the blues and you're like, well, okay, it's jazzy, it's flirty, what is it really about? And I remember working on it with Pierre Amoyal, who is a really great specialist of the work, and who told me this great story imagination that he had for the piece, with a banjo player and a New Orleans, kind of foggy bar atmosphere, and completely out of tune piano, and an old prostitute just singing in the corner, and she used to be beautiful, but she's not anymore, and she thinks she can sing, but she really can't. And so there's all this. He gave me all those ideas and pictures in my head, so that when and I usually actually tell the story now to audiences when I play the work, also to give them this kind of idea. Can you see it? Can you picture it? And I think that's what's amazing with that work, is that you can really just see images immediately in your head, especially, well, I really like the third movement as well, you know, the just for the challenge of it. But you know, it's just such a, you can really imagine like the train, you know, leaving the station, starting, and then choo 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 is just going, and it just never stops.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a tremendously technically difficult work for the violin. Am I right? Because I mean,
Yeah.
even the blues. I mean, it's like what you said. The first movement you can really see almost as in a painting. It's like broad strokes, like long lines and long arches of color, like phrases. And that's actually probably the movement where the piano and the violin are most intertwined together. And then the second movement, I mean, I'm being from the States and having played quite a bit of Gershwin, it was really cool to hear Ravel like this. I don't think he actually wrote any piano works that are nearly at the level of this one, being so jazzy in nature. He has, of course, jazz elements in his piano concertos, but definitely to a different extent. And the third movement is the one where I think the violinist is in full control and the piano is just kind of like trying to stay together and trying to not to get swept along in this the heat of the moment. But is it very difficult? I mean, even the second movement, just all the pizzas and stuff, it's painful for the fingers. Or?
Oh yeah. I don't know about you, but I've bled more than once, you know, just at the end going this, just practicing, you know, getting blisters. Well, but, you know, pianists, they get blisters all the time with the glissandi and stuff like this, no?
And funnily enough, a lot of the glissandi are written by Ravel, but it's still, I think in this one, what I would find very difficult is just going from the second movement and then switching gears 180 degrees into the third movement. Yeah, this is kind of, I think, a huge challenge that I imagine on the side of the violinist.
Yes,
Well,
but sorry.
No, go ahead.
That the decisive role here is not to play all the right notes, especially in the third movement, but to achieve that special rhythmic swing that this music is all about, I think. And I think that the piano part in this piece plays a very important role in this really physical rhythm, and it gives the groove, I think. And so there are just a few notes, but I think it's very important, this piano part also in the third movement.
I wonder, is this a piece that is very popular in violin competitions? I ask just because there are certain compositions that when you hear it, you're like, oh, that's a competition piece. At least for piano, I can name quite a few. But is this also one that's very popular in the violin competition circuit?
I'm not sure. I don't think I've heard it much in violin competitions. I know I've never played it. I think it's because it's extremely tricky. So, you know, it's extremely easy, I think, to miss the mark on the interpretation, you know, to go too far or not far enough on the blues. And you can always find people who will say it was too jazzy, it was not jazzy enough. And then, of course, you know, the last movement, well, you know, I've always said, you know, when I played with you, after that sonata, I need a break. You know, after just because, you know, you get started with this and then, you know, you don't know how to stop anymore. So by the time you get to the end, you know, I need to, you know, change arm and get a different arm and then, you know, start playing again. So I think for competitions, it's extremely tricky also because the three movements, they don't seem to be connected with each other.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to be in an extremely stable mental state, I think, to be able to just go through the sonata and change immediately exactly what you said, you know, going from movement to movement and change gear in your head. And I think for a competition, I don't know if a lot of people feel very safe in that sonata.
Well, I would guess because actually you can show so much with this piece that I thought maybe it's one of those pieces that is quite popular. But I can see what you mean. It's probably also a little bit, it's a little too open for judgment. Like there's a lot of different opinions on how it's.
But it's amazingly popular with the audience. Always.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it should be a kind of closer either in the first half or even concert end or so. Yeah. Something like that. But are there any specific experiences that you had, like a funny story or so of the piece that you can share, or maybe some favorite reference recordings that we can just mention for our listeners?
Yes, of course, this pizzicato parts in the second movement. Yes, the most incredible things have happened to me there in the concert. So, of course, the famous broken string, but also that I hit my finger really bloody, and it was. Yes, it was so strong, this pizzicato, that yes, yeah, really remarkable.
That is funny. That just totally reminded me. There was one time I was playing a kind of competition, and I was playing Ravel La Valse. And there is one moment, like towards the end, the coda, it's the piano version of the orchestra La Valse, of course. And there was a moment where there's a lot of cascading glissandos up and down and also on black keys. And I was playing them very vigorously. And on stage, I think sometimes it happens that we don't feel pain on stage. We're really full on going on with the adrenaline. And I suddenly looked down and there's like this river of blood, you know, when I went down, this blood was just coming all the way down the keyboard, you know, on all the keys. And the piece was finished pretty much 30 seconds later. And I went backstage and I told the next guy who was to go on stage, I was like, there's quite a bit of blood on the piano. Maybe I should clean it up. And he was like, little bit of blood, no problem. I'll clean it. I was like, oh, okay. And then he went up there and I remember he actually kind of gave an exclamation like, so viel Blut. And he took a kind of like towel and he was actually like really playing loudly, you know, to get the blood off. And oh, that was quite something. And I think like, what is this? Again, Ravel. So it's another Ravel story. I guess he writes some kind of extreme things, not only for violin, but also for the piano. This leads us in very smoothly into the Ravel Trio. Actually, I wanted to ask, when did Ravel write the violin sonata?
1922 to 27. So he took a very long time to write it.
Interesting. I mean, maybe that's also why each movement is so different. So it's a bit later than the trio. Okay. But Franzi, you've also played the Ravel Trio. Do you care to give us maybe a little intro about it, thoughts about it first?
Yes, I love this trio. I think it's one of the greatest chamber music works. And I think, yes, Ravel certainly did not want to write a trio based on European traditions. And on the other hand, he included a number of, yes, quite unusual and even non-European stylistic features. And especially in the first movement, the influence of, yes, Basque music is very special. And then in the second movement, we have this Malaysian poem form, very, very interesting. And in the Passacaglia, the third movement, it's an old Spanish dance. And then the fourth movement, this is the movement where I recognize yes, things that point to the time of its composition. So around the beginning of the First World War. We find all the exotic influences here and the old, yes, traditional forms. And that's very, very special, I think, and very remarkable.
I'm glad you said that because absolutely, from what I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ravel wrote the first three movements a little bit before the war. And then because he got the job and he was dispatched as an ambulance driver during World War I, he hurriedly finished the trio. So he kind of wrote the fourth movement exactly like at the time of his recruitment. And when I hear it, I almost hear like sirens and ambulance blares. There's moments where the strings are kind of like, it almost sounds like screams of despair. So you can hear this kind of a fighting spirit. And I think in this time, Ravel also wrote, for example, the Left Hand Concerto. And these are all pieces that memorialize the war or document his own emotions. And it's quite an emotional journey, I would say. Solenne, we actually had the pleasure to record this work. Thinking back now, it's been more than a year since we recorded it. I always thought of Ravel Trio as being one of the most difficult works, not only to play together, to mesh it all together, but just physically to play on the piano. It takes such a long time. It's almost as if you're learning one of the Ravel concertos or so. There's just so many notes. And then in order to fit one another and to find the right interpretation, it's another challenge in itself. So Solenne, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your thoughts about the piece.
About the trio, I mean, I think it's just one of the most perfect pieces of chamber music ever written, which actually rejoins also with the string quartet. You know, it's just one of those pieces where you wouldn't even think of changing one single note. And I think it's somehow, well, you know, of course, being French, we grow up with, you know, saying Ravel is absolutely perfect anyway. But I think that's what's amazing. Also, with all those influences, it stays always Ravel. It's never, you know, you can hear all the influences and everything, but his personality, his style is so strong. Yeah. That you know, it never changes, being his music and his harmonies. So I think that's something. But yeah, in terms of the difficulty, I think just to put the piece together, just to actually play it together, and then, you know, to reach the same kind of ideas about sound. Yeah. Because well, you know, it's in this trio.
It's more even the violin and cello, they have to be really at one with one another. There are so many duets amongst them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, especially, you know, this very special place in the third movement where we even had to, you know, agree on what kind of mute to use to make, you know, this extremely special sound at the end. So we chose, you know, wooden mutes, but so we had to both have the same mutes, and, you know, just to have the same kind of idea and to be ready spiritually to just become one in this moment. It's
I remember that moment. It was a good one. where the piano is mainly just watching the love blossom between the other instruments. Yeah, so we actually, this recording will be coming out pretty soon. We've paired it with Ravel Trio and Chanson Quartet, and that will be available, I guess, sometime next month, in about 1 month is release date. So looking forward to that. Franzi, let's go back a little bit to your festival. So you've had the first edition of during your tenure, let's say, last year. And this year, actually, the festival is taking place. How different is the programming now than the original concept of the second year?
Yes, we have to adjust the program a little bit. Some formats we can not organize that we planned before. And so, for example, we have hikes with wine tasting and meals for the audience in the program. And we cannot realize these program points in Corona times.
Is that a new idea of yours? Because I don't know if we've seen it's a hike.
Yes, yeah.
That sounds lovely.
Exactly. We'd like to go there.
Yeah, it's especially for the younger artists. They are playing there, so we have cooperations with Villa Musica, Rheinland-Pfalz, and Deutsche Stiftung Musikleben. So the young artists are coming there and playing concerts, and yes, there are these hikes for the audience, and yes, but yes, it's wonderful that all the other concerts can take place. We have
okay.
So, and most of the concerts are streamed additionally in the Abbey Radio Festival.
Oh,
so
lovely.
We have the possibility to have 200 listeners in the audience.
200. I mean, isn't that actually more than the Abbey?
That was, in the Abbey was about the same.
Yes, about the same. I think 220 are possible in the Abbey.
Okay.
So we have this large tent, and there are in normal times 1,000 listeners can sit in this tent. So we have really big space.
Yeah. And how will it be acoustically? I mean, you will obviously have a professional sound team to record the concerts for the radio.
I think it's very, very good. It's a little bit drier than in the Abbey, but it's beautiful. And I think in these times we all are so happy to play and to have an audience, and so it's not that important like in other times.
Okay. And it's already started, this Kammermusiktage, right?
Yes, so the opening concert was 2 weeks ago, and there we had the tenor Christophe Prégatien and the Oberon Trio, and it was an indescribable, very emotional experience to open the festival in this times. Yeah.
And the audience, surely they were most appreciative. Yes.
Yes, the audience were so happy to finally experience live concerts, and everybody could feel how important is it to have the live event.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I've noticed that a bit too. I mean, not only do the audience appreciate it, but just as a performer, it's so difficult not to feel as if this is a job. We're just traveling, we're just playing, but actually to feel that each moment on stage or each concert, it's a real gift to be able to have this personal exchange. I mean, I was saying mostly at home in the US, and I was practicing, and sometimes I was so desperate. I was like, please, I would ask my sister or my dad, like, please just listen to me. Like, just sit down and listen to me. And they didn't want to. They would always be there with their computers, and it just felt like, I really miss this actual human contact, this full attention that you get only in a concert hall. And I think sometimes with the streaming, that was a problem, because there's so many distractions. If we're watching a stream, even of a top concert, we have our phones, we have like other windows open maybe on the computers, and it's just very hard to kind of give it that 100%. So it's absolutely lovely that your festival is taking place. So Solenne, about your upcoming plans, you're going to be moving to Germany very soon. And do you actually have any other exciting plans to share with us, or some more thoughts about what made you really, now is the time you realized you want to go from being solo as an orchestra member to going into a full-time professor?
Yeah, I mean, it's lovely that it's happening actually now, because obviously concerts are becoming a rarity.
Yeah.
So at least now it's going to take a while, before it gets started again. I saw all my summer that was obviously fully booked, and with master classes and stuff like this, and concerts and everything, more or less got cancelled. So it seemed like also in a way just the perfect time to really focus on teaching, which is something that I've been doing anyway, half time for more than 5 years now. So, and it's something that I really love also, because the students who are coming now, into their bachelor, their master, they need support. They're going to need a lot of guidance. Yeah. Maybe a lot more than what we needed, because we just needed our music lesson and that's it. Yeah. But I think these days when you're a teacher, you really start to think also, okay, what kind of future for those people, and how to best orient them into what is best for them. Yeah. Which is not, it's not only just come and get your lesson and learn how to play Mendelssohn concerto. Although that's already a challenge enough.
I think it's so much more now than going beyond just practicing and doing something well. You just have to keep an open mind and like kind of embrace all the facets of music. And then that way you can hopefully one day find something nice that can help you make a living in this field. It's very challenging. I've thought about that a lot. I mean, there is also the question of just this whole, it's almost like students are losing about a year, and those students who are in America, they're losing more than a year. They're losing, a really extended amount of time. And I think for a young student, this time is so precious. So yeah, it's a real time of change, and we need to find new ways to adapt into that. Wow, well, this was really great talking to both of you. I would like to really highlight Franzi's festival, the Kammermusiktage Medlock, where you can hear a lot of the concerts. I guess, Franzi, you said there's streamed a lot of it on the ARD Radio Festival. Will there also be some video streams or something on Facebook?
No, unfortunately not. We have this cooperation with the radio, and that's.
Yes. Oh, so I think so. Probably many concerts will also be just on Saarländischer Rundfunk.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's great. Definitely check that out. And Franzi, also you have a kind of relatively new CD, Sequenza, which is also available to be listened to on IDAGIO. So I urge you all to take a listen. I listened to a few pieces today, and it's all very intriguing music. Solenne, you have a Bach recording, which you said came out this year. And recording Bach is always a very emotional experience, I would guess, because he almost represents the essence of music. Any just last comments to tell the listeners?
Yeah, well, for me, the reason I put it in the CD and the reason why I wanted to record Bach is because Bach is essential. And I think that's something for us, for all musicians, we always come back to Bach.
Yeah,
it's just the beginning and end of everything, and especially in this time. I mean, you look at what people were playing, online, and what people most often connected with, and most of it is Bach. And it's not a coincidence. It's just something so basic. It just speaks to everybody.
Yeah,
and that was that was the reason for recording this CD for me.
And I think, like, even though there's so many recordings of Bach throughout all the instruments, you can never really get enough. And I think there always comes a point in every musician's life where it's they realize, like, Bach is, even if we don't perform it so much on stage, it's still a real center, fulcrum, let's say, of our musical development. So yeah, have a listen to Solenne's Bach album, Sonatas and Partitas. Check out the full discographies of both Franziska Hölscher and Solenne Païdassi on IDAGIO Live. Thank you for joining us today on IDAGIO Live, where classical music happens. Thank you for joining me, Franzi and Solenne, and see you next time.
Thank you, Claire.